The story will be told from the perspective of the main female character.
A sharp tone went off on my cell phone. The sound stopped the entire conference meeting immediately. I looked at the security camera feed. The life I spent years building seemed to shift sideways. My sister, Sarah, was standing right in my apartment. Sunlight reflected off the files she had just taken from my secure safe. She wasn't nervous at all. She actually had a wide smile, holding the documents like prizes. I stood in the federal office, 300 miles away, witnessing the whole thing unfold. My ID badge was hanging on my neck, and my heart was pounding in my chest. I didn't scream or leave immediately. I just watched, thinking, she truly thinks she's above the law. I placed one calm phone call. It wasn't the kind of call for crying. It was the kind that immediately brings the police. Before explaining what happened when those sirens reached the front door of our family home, I want to ask where you are listening from. I need to know I'm not the only person who realized enforcing justice starts with your own family. When people think of family, they usually picture closeness and warmth. Mine only seemed that way on the surface. We had two proud parents, a favorite, younger sister, and me, the quiet one with the government job. Our holiday pictures were perfect. Neighbors would always say how fortunate we were to have each other. Fortune wasn't part of it. It was really a strict system of favoritism disguised as affection. I was 32. I spent long hours at the Treasury Department, investigating global accounts for security fraud. I couldn't discuss my work at all, not my security clearances, not the investigations, and definitely not the successful cases I had cracked. My folks just assumed I handled routine office papers in a small cubicle. When neighbors inquired about my career, Mom would just smile and say, "Jessica makes sure the lights stay on in NYC." I never bothered correcting that statement. Trying to explain the facts to people who already dismissed me felt pointless, like describing colors to someone who refused to see. My sister, Sarah, was the total opposite, bright, noisy, and magnetic. She always took up so much space that no one else was noticed. Growing up, she would borrow my clothes without asking permission, take credit for my ideas, and always manage to get away with it because she would tilt her head, laugh, and say, "She doesn't mind." I always minded. I just learned early on that pointing it out only made me sound jealous. Our parents absolutely loved that version of her, charming, ambitious, headed toward high society. She married young to Mark, a dentist who bought a brand new SUV every few years. Their house had an open floor plan and a built-in wine fridge. These were the things Mom mentioned constantly, like merit badges. Whenever I visited, Dad would always joke, "Maybe one day you'll get a real job and buy a place like this." I would reply with the same practiced curve of a smile I used in federal briefings when senators interrupted me mid-sentence. I wasn't bitter, or at least I told myself that. I had built a career that truly mattered. Every file I handled at work carried the weight of national trust. Every password and clearance test reminded me I carried more responsibility than they could ever imagine. Still, there were nights I'd sit alone in my quiet apartment, scrolling through their group photos, captions full of hearts, and feel the same slow ache that started years ago. The kind that comes from being in the picture but never truly being seen. 2 weeks before the actual theft, my sister, Sarah, called out of nowhere. "You should join us for dinner next Thursday," she told me. "We're celebrating a big deal, family only." Her voice had that specific sweet, syrupy tone she used when she needed something from me. I agreed anyway. Perhaps a small part of me still hoped we could have a normal relationship. Maybe I just wanted to stop feeling like a guest whenever I was with my own family. The evening of that dinner, I drove up to my folks' house with the usual quiet sense of dread that always accompanied family get-togethers. The driveway was full. Mom's sedan, Dad's truck, and Sarah's gleaming white Range Rover were parked under the porch light. I could already see her through the front window, moving in the dining room, laughing brightly, acting like the star of her own show. Inside, the house smelled of rosemary and expensive wine. Mom hugged me too tightly, the way she did when she was nervous. "You made it, honey," she said, quickly eyeing my professional blazer. "Still dressing like a corporate lawyer, I see." I smiled, placed the bottle of wine I brought on the counter, and quietly took my seat at the far end of the long table. Dinner started smoothly. Light talk, some gossip, and updates about Sarah's children. Then, mid-meal, she cleared her throat dramatically. "I actually have some important news," she announced, glancing at her husband, Mark. "We made a substantial investment. It covers college funds for the boys and maybe even a summer lakehouse later on." Dad beamed instantly. "That's my girl," he praised, always thinking ahead. I raised one eyebrow. "Investment? What kind exactly?" Sarah gave me that practiced smirk that never quite reached her eyes. "You'll find out soon." She reached down next to her chair, and when her hand came up, she was holding a thick stack of manila folders. "My folders?" She stood up, holding them high for everyone to see. "Look what I found, sis. Your little secret savings." For a second, I thought I had completely misheard her. Then I clearly recognized the specific labels, the serial numbers, and the treasury seals, the exact files that had been secured in my locked safe. Dad looked confused. "Savings? What's this supposed to mean?" "Apparently," Sarah said, laughing loudly, "Jessica has been hoarding a little nest egg. Some old bond certificates or whatever they are. Don't worry, nothing illegal, just dormant assets." She waved them around like party confetti. Mom leaned forward, her eyes wide with clear pride. "Honey, that is so generous of you. You saved all this for your nephews." "Thanks for the college fund," Sarah chirped, smirking right at me. Our parents were just glowing with pride. I couldn't move. The room suddenly felt tiny, and the chandelier light seemed too harsh. My family was celebrating stolen federal property, and not a single one of them understood the gravity of it. I finally managed to ask, "Where did you get those documents?" Sarah shrugged casually. "From your place of work. You really need to upgrade your lock, by the way. It's seriously child's play." Mark chuckled nervously. "She has a point. If I found $650,000 lying around, I'd probably do the same thing." Mom playfully swatted his arm. "Don't tease, she won't mind." I looked from face to face. No one would meet my gaze. In that moment, it wasn't just about the files. It represented years of being overlooked, minimized, and misunderstood. The slow wearing down from always being the dependable one in a family that only valued loudness. Sarah tucked the folders into her large designer purse. "We'll make sure this money works for the entire family," she stated. "You can thank me later." I pushed my chair back, the sound slicing through the silence. "Enjoy your meal," I said softly. "I have something urgent I need to handle." No one tried to stop me as I walked out the door. The night air was freezing, sharp enough to sting my skin. I stood on the porch for a full minute, listening to their laughter still spilling out through the walls, sounding like it belonged to a different world entirely. My hands were perfectly steady when I took out my phone. Years of professional training had made this muscle memory. I didn't try to argue, nor did I go back inside. I just scrolled to the secure contact marked AP Treasury Internal and pressed the call button. Mr. Jensen, my supervisor, answered the call. His voice was tense. "I must report a breach," I stated. "Category 1, federal property is in civilian hands." The pause was short but heavy. "Are you certain?" he asked. "I saw the footage myself," I replied. "Subject is known to me. Relation is my sister." The words felt surgical, but my pulse raced. He exhaled. "Follow protocol. I will loop in OIG and financial crimes. Stay put until instructed." "Understood." I hung up, then forwarded the camera footage to the encrypted channel. Sarah's face filled the frame, smiling, picking the lock, taking the folders. The proof was clean. For the first time that night, I breathed deeply. The cold air bit through my blazer, grounding me. Inside, I could still hear the clinking and Mom's soft laugh. My sister's voice carried that familiar triumph. I whispered, "You thought I'd stay silent forever." Driving home, the road blurred. My phone buzzed. It was Agent Diaz from the Treasury Inspector General's office. "Ms., we received your report. The bonds are flagged in the database. A team will respond tonight." "Copy that," I said. "They are at my parents' residence in Boston. I'll cooperate fully." Her voice softened slightly. "We know this isn't easy. It's necessary," I stated. By the time I reached my apartment, the adrenaline had settled into cold certainty. I poured water, stared at the city lights, and replayed the dinner scene, their smiles, the casual betrayal. I signed an oath to follow the law above personal ties. I always thought it was just a formality. I checked the clock, 9:07 p.m. The response team was moving. I pictured the scene, the knock, the confusion, the realization. My family mistook my silence for weakness. Tonight, they would learn what silence truly meant. Before bed, I texted Agent Diaz. "I'll be at the residence in the morning to give my statement. Confirm when secure." Her reply came instantly. "Understood. Team en route." I put the phone face down, exhaled, and let the choice settle. It was accountability. By morning, the law would be at their door. The next morning, the news broke before sunrise. My phone vibrated nonstop with Treasury alerts. The bonds were marked as stolen federal property. Their serial numbers had triggered flags across every financial network. I didn't check the reports. I knew exactly what they would find. By 7 p.m., I was back in Boston, pulling into the driveway. The Range Rover gleamed. Laughter drifted from the window. I thought, absurdly, that nothing had changed. I knocked once and walked in. Dinner was underway. Sarah looked radiant. Mom turned, startled. "Jessica, we didn't think you." Return. "I have unfinished business," I said quietly, taking the seat across from Sarah. Her smirk flickered. "Cooled off yet? Look about the bonds, don't freak out." I spoke to an advisor. He said they're antique certificates worth maybe 10 grand. "We'll cash them next week. Reinvest." "Stop." My voice cut through the noise. "You are not cashing anything." Dad frowned. "Honey, no need for that tone. There's every need. Those aren't antique certificates. They are bearer bonds issued by the U.S. Treasury. Federal securities, registered and tracked." Mark blinked. "Federal. Worth $650,000, I said. "Stolen from a classified safe." The air went still. Sarah laughed too loudly. "You're joking. You think I stole from the government, from my own sister." "I don't think. I know. The footage is already in federal custody." Mom's hand trembled. "Sweetheart, surely we can handle this privately." She broke into a secure residence, bypassed a lock, opened a safe, and took protected instruments. "That's a crime." Sister's voice rose, desperate. "They were just sitting there. You never tell anyone what you do." "That's what clearance means, sister," I said. "You're not supposed to know." A heavy knock shook the front door. 3 beats, then a woman's voice. "Treasury Inspector General." Every head turned to me. I stayed seated. "That'll be for you." Sarah froze. "You didn't." I said nothing. Dad moved to the door, but it opened first. Agents in black jackets entered. Agent Diaz stood at the front, credentials out, voice clipped. "Good evening. We have a federal warrant for the arrest of your sister." Mom gasped. "What? This is absurd." Agent Diaz didn't waver. "She is under arrest for theft of government property, defeating federal security measures, and attempted securities fraud." Mark's fork clattered. "Oh my God." Sarah stood so fast her chair fell. "You can't be serious. I'm her sister." "Which makes this worse," I said softly. 2 agents stepped forward. Sarah tried to back away. Agent Diaz spoke, voice steady. "Hands where we can see them." The trial proceeded much faster than anyone had anticipated. Within weeks, the footage from my apartment was presented as evidence. It was high definition, time-stamped, and impossible to argue against. Sarah's face filled every frame, picking the lock, opening the safe, and lifting the files with that same look of triumph. Her defense attorney attempted every strategy, claiming she believed the documents were just family assets and that she didn't grasp their true value. However, the serial numbers and internal federal records completely dismantled that argument. During the court proceedings, I sat behind the prosecution table, my hands folded, my posture straight. I was not there seeking vengeance. I was there simply to conclude the duty I had started. When the verdict was announced, guilty on all counts, Sarah began sobbing so uncontrollably she could barely catch her breath. The judge's voice remained even as he read the sentence. 12 years in federal prison, $650,000 in restitution, and $200,000 in fines. Mom cried silently in the gallery. Dad just stared down at the floor, his lips pressed white. Mark, her husband, never showed up for the final days of the trial. He had already filed for divorce. When the correctional officers led Sarah away, she looked over her shoulder at me one final time. I did not look away. I had already communicated everything I needed to say by choosing to reveal the truth. After the sentencing was complete, I stepped out into the weak winter sunlight. The courthouse stairs felt incredibly long, but each step lessened the weight I had carried for years. I reflected on all the times I had been invisible at that family table, dismissed, ignored, and forgotten, and realized that doing what was right had not diminished me. It had finally made me visible. 3 years later, I was promoted to senior supervisory analyst at the Treasury. I now lead a team of 12 investigators, collaborate with agents from 6 different countries, and received a significant commendation for successfully recovering nearly $400 million in stolen securities. At the awards ceremony, the secretary shook my hand and said, "Integrity like yours is what truly keeps this department operational." My parents did not attend. I hadn't expected them to. Sarah occasionally still writes to me from prison. Sometimes the letters are filled with apologies that quickly transition into requests for parole recommendations or money for the restitution payments. I keep them stored in a drawer, completely unopened. Some life lessons must be learned the hardest way possible. People often assume justice feels loud and satisfying, like a dramatic movie conclusion with applause. It does not. It feels very quiet. It feels like finally being able to breathe again. 3 years on, my apartment feels different. It is cleaner, quieter, and generally undisturbed. The new security system, which the Treasury paid to install after the case, hums softly. Sometimes I stand by the window at night, looking over the city lights, thinking about how silence used to feel painful. Now it feels like peace. My parents still possess a spare key to my apartment. They have never used it. Perhaps that is their way of showing regret or maintaining distance. Either way, I have completely stopped waiting for them to finally understand. People still ask me if I ever wish I had handled things differently. I tell them no. You can grant someone forgiveness without excusing their actions. You can still love your family and simultaneously establish a clear boundary they are forbidden to ever cross. If you have ever faced the decision between family loyalty and doing what is right, I understand how heavy that choice feels. But trust me, doing the right thing will never destroy you. It will only reveal who is willing to destroy you first. If this narrative resonated with you, please share your experience below.